Hello, Garland Nixon. We're hanging out with a professional cynic of the highest order, Mark Sleboda. Let's talk. Hello, Garland Nixon here with Mark Sleboda. He's straight out of Moscow, and he's going to give us his thoughts on the current cluster maneuver going on by the Trump administration. At any rate, let's get started. Well, here's the big one I want to ask you about, and I'm putting two things together. Qatar has said, we're closing down our LNG, natural gas, whatever it is. We ain't pumping, right? That stopped. And Vladimir Putin, always a man, that Russian sense of humor, although I don't think he's joking, comes out and says, these stinking Europeans have decided that they don't want our gas anymore at the end of this year. Perhaps we shouldn't wait. Perhaps now's a good time to ship this gas to our friendly countries, to people that you don't want our gas. We don't want to force gas on people who don't want our evil old Russian gas. I just had to smile when I heard that, Mark. What's happening?
Yeah, so the economic consequences of this conflict, both the shall we say indirect ones and direct ones, because this is obviously part of Iran's strategy as well. They have two goals, right? The first one is to survive, right? To survive, their government to survive, their way of life to survive, a continuation, right, of them. And in pursuit of that, their secondary goal is to inflict as much damage on the U.S. and Israel as possible to make them stop. Okay. Now, Iran's not going to destroy Israel. I mean, they don't. Let's be realistic. They do damage. They do significant damage, right? But this is not an existential threat. Iran's not going to destroy the United States. Their goal is to make the U.S. and Israel pay such a high price for destroying them that they give up. And there's two different ways to go about this, and they're pursuing both simultaneously. One is direct damage on their military assets, on their infrastructure, on economic facilities in Israel. And the second one is to make them feel the pain economically. And that is being reinforced by attacks on the infrastructure, the energy infrastructure of all of the Gulf Arab states that are aligned with the United States, have U.S. military bases through which attacks are being carried out. There have been attacks on Saudi oil infrastructure. There have been attacks on Qatari infrastructure. There have been attacks on tankers. There have been attacks, the last I saw, on infrastructure for the Bahrain Petroleum Company, right? All of this is, and of course, shutting down the Hormuz Strait, which is the big, nuclear option of Iran that is already being thrown. And the goal here is to raise global energy prices, oil and gas, so high that the U.S. and Israel have to stop. That is, simultaneous with the direct military strikes. And everyone understood oil, but of course Qatar is the second biggest exporter of LNG in the world. That LNG is becoming increasingly important for a lot of countries. And if Qatar is shutting down, that has immediate market effects, as well as there is a usual effect of once oil goes up, then with a lag, natural gas usually follows line. So, they're feeding off of each other. But right now, as of yesterday, I haven't even seen the numbers for today yet, but as of yesterday, the price of natural gas, which the Europeans use extensively for electricity generation, for heating, for everything, is up 30% as a whole. And places that is considerably higher. In the UK, the wholesale price for gas was up 93%. Right? So we already know that as a consequence of cutting themselves off, the blowback from existential economic war of sanctions on Russia and cutting themselves off from Russian oil and pipeline oil and gas, that they have deindustrialized their own economies, right? It's not an assertion of us. This is their own acknowledgement of the deindustrialization of Germany, right? The economic heart of Europe. And as if they, a lot of the reason the businesses are closing, shutting down, some of them moving to the United States is the cost of energy. It is prohibitive. Now, on top of that, they have this crisis, which is sending everything stratospheric. And remember, as the price of oil and gas go up, and as Western businesses suffer and Western stock markets collapse, the exact opposite effect is happening in Russia. Because as prices of oil and gas go up, the share value of those big companies in Russia is it's stratospheric, right? It's going straight up. The Russian stock exchange is booming. Everything is eventually, if everyone else goes down, then you have global market effects. But right now, the immediate reaction is the opposite of what is happening in the West. And in particular, Qatari LNG goes to a lot of Asian markets. And also the Strait of Hormuz, through which somewhere between 20 and 30% of the oil traffic in the world every day goes through, that also goes to the Pacific. And between the oil and the LNG, in particular, China imports a lot of energy, right? But although it's more energy sufficient, largely because of a huge investment in alternative energies that a lot of people have no idea has happened, but also because of pipeline gas and oil from Russia and so forth. But yeah, China imports a lot, but it's got other alternatives. It's not critical for them. However, when we're looking at U.S. Pacific allies like Japan and South Korea, they are almost entirely reliant on oil and LNG from the Gulf. This is going to have huge economic damage on these U.S. allies / vassals, however the Trump administration chooses to think of them. And of course, the Europeans are suffering very, to use a Trumpism, very bigly as well, very, very bigly. So, and there's no end in sight. There's no end in sight to this. Iran continues, with its strikes, and right now I see this. It's hard to assess the amount of damage being done to each side. I see Tehran and Tel Aviv are both being pummeled into dust. Right. That's what I see. This is a long-range strike, war of attrition. Both sides' air defense is insufficient in different ways, right? Whether a combination of capability, the number of interceptor exhaustion already rearing its head for the U.S. and its allies, as we knew it would, and we've been talking about for weeks, and destruction of air defense systems, both Iran's and the West's. We saw Iran take out very expensive radars, the most important component for two THAAD systems in yesterday, and I haven't seen if there's any more today. And the U.S. only has a handful of THAAD systems, a handful, right? There's not that many of them. So incredible. All right. So this means that everyone's defensive game is either insufficient or non-existent, right? Depending on the place. But both sides are wailing away with each other with long-range strikes, right? The U.S. is still, and Israel, as far as I know, are still pretty much entirely doing standoff strikes with their aircraft out of Iraqi airspace, out of the Gulf, potentially out of the Caspian, right? So some other places. The exception being Reaper drones, right, and some other drones that are willing to go into Iranian airspace and risk what air defense that Iran has left. And I've seen a few Reapers brought down, but I've also seen more of them patrolling and firing off and taking out launchers and the like without repercussion. So that's dangerous for Iran, of course. But both sides are just wailing away with each other offensively, right? The standoff strikes, the U.S. Tomahawk missiles, and so forth. We have seen at least one B-2 bomber strikes. We don't even know exactly what they hit. We assume that was nuclear facilities, but we don't know. And on the other side, Iran, I think we've all seen the videos of strikes with long-range ballistic missiles, with cruise missiles, with drones in particular, the eponymous Shaheds that Iran has been using so effectively, and hypersonic missiles. And I don't think there's any doubt now, hypersonic. In fact, we did see unleashed on Israel for the first time yesterday what appeared to be a hypersonic missile with a multiple warheads that separated above the target and then did massive damage below. And what I've seen, right, and this isn't necessarily the case for every, but I have seen several video evidence of Western air defense interceptors, right, either Patriots or the Israeli zone, like I like to call it
David's sling.
David's boomerang, because it often fires back on itself, right? But they're firing sometimes. They're always firing 2, 3 interceptors. Sometimes I've seen 5, 6, 7 interceptors targeting a single ballistic missile, and that ballistic missile still gets through. Now, you want to do the cost ratio there, right? An Iranian ballistic missile costs somewhere between $2 and $3 million. And when we're talking the interceptors, those are $3 million a piece. It's just not. It's not. That is the economic side of the war of attrition. And if the conflict continues for a long time, that will have, of course, an effect. But more immediately, it's simply a question of stockpiles. And everyone knows, no matter what Trump says, that the U.S. is burning through their stockpiles of air defense interceptors, which were already critically low last year, and they have not been able to replenish them at all. So it's a race to the bottom, right, to see who runs completely out of air defense and also who runs out of offensive weapons, because we were told in the New York Times and the Times of Israel last week that the U.S. only has offensive standoff strike weapons like the Tomahawk for 4 days of intense, and we're already past that, a week of less intense strike. So they're already pushing their limits. And when Trump makes comments about, they have an infinite amount of mid and high range weapons, he's leaving out what weapons they don't have. He's throwing all weapons together. And here's the danger for Iran. If they successfully suppress Iran's air defense to such a degree that U.S. and Israeli aircraft are able to enter Iranian airspace freely or relatively freely, then they can switch from using standoff missiles and Tomahawk cruise missiles to JDAMs, right? To old bombs with smart bomb kits. And they do have effectively an infinite supply of those, right? That's a very dangerous situation for Iran ahead. And that's certainly what they are aiming for with their air campaign. Now, at the same time, all of this is going on with this offensive slugfest going back and forth, right? The U.S. is also now starting to talk about a ground game. And they're talking, yes, they're talking U.S. troops, although that's all still high in the sky stuff. It would take really long. They don't have anything in place. It would probably take months. But they're talking about activating their proxies on the ground. Now, first and foremost among those is the Iranian Kurds, which are largely based at the moment out of Iraq. Iran has a large Kurdish population, right? It's about 10% of the population. And these groups, different factions were already being assembled last week, formed some joint, coalition of convenience or whatever. The U.S. has already been arming them for a year now. There's talk about them crossing the border. However, Iran has already been hitting them across the border in Iraq with drone strikes. I've seen several of those so far. But I'm just amazed, really. The Kurds, again, I know it's not the same Kurds, right? The Kurds are not one unified people. They've got different political factions in different countries and so forth. But you've seen the Iraqi Kurds been thrown under the bus by the United States. You've seen the Syrian Kurds just recently been thrown under the bus by the United States and fed to Al-Qaeda in Syria. And now the Iranian Kurds are willing to make, sacrificial victims out of themselves for U.S. goals in Iran. There never fails to be enough of them. But there are other separatist groups, right, to be activated. The Balochi, Arab groups, and Azerbaijan. And again, Iran, particularly in the northwest, does have a substantial Azeri ethnic minority. How much penetration of that minority, I am not sure, because not all Iranian Azerbaijani look to the country of Azerbaijan, say, as a model type of country. That they tend to be more religious as a general term. But here we see two possible. We already see that this conflict has gone so horizontal. It is expanded across the Middle East to an amazing degree, right? A degree that a lot of people didn't expect. We've seen Iranian strikes in Cyprus. We've seen the U.S. take down an Iranian warship off the coast of Sri Lanka, right? Look at the spread there. But two more countries that could become involved are Turkey and Azerbaijan. The U.S. is pushing Azerbaijan to get involved in support of the Azeri ethnic minority in Iran, and that, basically saying, take a chunk out of this corner of Iran, right? Because their goal is to balkanize, to break up Iran, right? That's their goal here. At the same time, the Turks, which are NATO members and have had worsening relations with Iran since Syria, for a significant time now. At the same time, if there's anything that drives the Turks into a fit of fury, frothing fury, it is arming Kurds. This creates all kinds of problems for Turkey and the relations between the U.S. and Turkey, and Israel and Turkey, and Israel and Azerbaijan are linked at the hip. At the same time, at least rhetorically, Turkey hates Israel, although they've never actually done anything yet. It's getting so complicated already. And these are possible countries that it could spread into, that a lot of people. Lebanon is drifting towards civil war. Hezbollah struck back on behalf of Iran and in revenge for the targeted assassination of the Ayatollah Khamenei. Hezbollah has entered the chat, entered the conflict on the Iran side, began large scale bombing of Israel with rockets. And Israel replied right back with airstrikes. They never really stopped airstrikes on Lebanon. So, but yeah, they certainly increased them. And now they're talking moving ground forces into southern Lebanon as well. At the same time, the quisling Lebanese government, which is controlled by the West, has declared that Hezbollah must stop what they're doing and stop, trying to drag Lebanon into a conflict, like Israel hasn't been bombing them forever. Right? The government of Lebanon ordered that Hezbollah must be disarmed, and they ordered the Lebanese army, which, shall we say, does not have the same military capabilities as Hezbollah, to disarm Hezbollah. So they've threatened this before, right? This has been threatened all the time. I don't believe, but of course they're going to be under enormous Western pressure now. This could lead to a civil conflict in Lebanon, a renewal of civil war in Lebanon. At the same time, let's take a look at Bahrain, right? This little island nation, not very far from Iran. They've got a 70 to 80% Shia ethnic majority. They're ruled over by an Arab dictator, monarchy ruling class, and they've got U.S. military bases. Every video that I saw out of Bahrain that showed, either U.S. military bases or even, Bahraini infrastructure being hit, it was usually filmed by said Shiites, the majority of the population, and they were cheering wildly as their country was hit, right? Because they're against, the policies of their Sunni Arab, masters, ruling class. This, at the same time, Saudi Arabia has moved troops into Bahrain to try to suppress the growing riots in the country, the attempted storming of the U.S. embassy and U.S. military bases and so forth. Here is another country that could descend into civil conflict of a very nasty sort already throughout this conflict. So it's a mess. There's a lot going on. And of course, the Houthis are already involved, and there's talk about the Houthis targeting Saudi Arabia, reigniting the conflict from years ago when Saudi Arabia was invading Yemen and trying to install their pliant government throughout the entirety of the country. The whole Middle East is on fire.
Who saw that coming? Except everybody who said, if you do this, the whole Middle East will be on fire. Nah, come on. There's reports that another F-15 was shot down. If that's true, they're up to about 5 that have gone down, although we're told they were friendly fire. But there's something called IFF.
Yeah, but Kuwait, is within range of Iran's S-300s if they're still operable, but it's still pretty far. I'm actually willing to believe that, right? It's not 100% certainty. I'm willing to believe it was friendly fire because we know that the U.S. has problems with its IFF system, just as Russia at the beginning of their SMO had some problems with their IFF system, and the West was mocking Russia for that at the early days of the conflict. The fact that some Kuwaiti aircraft may have accidentally shot down some American aircraft, mistaking them for Iranian missiles, is plausible. right? It's not a certainty. We need more evidence, but I don't dismiss that. And this is not very well organized, right? The U.S. has a lot of partners, vassals, in the area, and they haven't worked extensively with a lot of them. Certainly, I mean, no one has been involved in a conflict of this intensity ever, right? In the Middle East. I mean, not since the Iran-Iraq war, and these Arab states weren't involved in that. It's a mess for the U.S. And its Arab client states in the region, both economically and militarily. And yes, the U.S. is going to lose aircraft, but both from the Iranians and from quote unquote friendly fire.
All right, Mark. Now let's move into some other places because as we talked about earlier. Israel, the EU's in deep and serious trouble, and they ain't seen trouble yet to what's coming. If they're like, this will go on 4 weeks, 6 weeks, man, if this thing went on 4 to 6 weeks, the disruption of global economy would be cataclysmic to a biblical level.
Politico just had a report out talking to sources in the administration, and they do seem to get a lot of leaks or leaks, quote unquote, from the administration. They're talking months now. They're talking till September.
There won't be anything left economically if the Gulf is closed till September, and Russia will be. I don't know where they'll put all the money. The way things are going for Russia, they'll actually need to enlarge the country because they won't have anywhere to store all the money that they'll be getting. It's insane.
Trump made this post just yesterday, I believe it was, where he said that the U.S. is going to give all of the ships transiting Hormuz provide insurance for them. And it's going to provide a naval escort through the Straits of Hormuz. And then the Navy was like, what you talking about, Willis?
Right. What do you mean we? What do you mean we? No, hell, we'll put you on a boat. You go through the
U.S. Navy right now is well aware of the Iranian long-range strike capability, which is why they're hiding way off as far as the closest they can get to the Indian Ocean, so that they're not putting U.S. carriers and other valuable ships at risk. To escort ships through the Strait of Hormuz, they would have to put their ships at risk of Iranian drones, Iranian aircraft, Iranian swarm boat, sea mines, anti-ship missiles, anything that I'm sure people from the Navy very quickly told, President Trump that maybe you should talk to us before you go saying things like that, because we can't do that.
No, that's suicide. Yeah. Now let's talk about something. Let's move over to Europe and Ukraine. A couple of things. Number one, I recall that the Europeans and the Ukrainians had kind of agreed, Ukraine's going to run out of money probably like around April. And the Europeans said, we'll give you Russian funds. Oops, can't get that. Okay, $90 billion, to which you and I both said, who the hell would buy those bonds? Okay, we can't sell $90 billion. They ain't coming up with nothing now, Mark. They're shutting up. Some of them are even saying, perhaps we need to talk to Russia. Russia's like, oh, I think you got your second. I think you coming back to me, you're going to have a real problem, brothers. But
now,
they got...
Now is the time to tighten the screws.
Yeah. Oh, I can just see Putin out there. Can we get some gas? Yeah, exactly. Perhaps we can make a deal. Oh, no.
Why don't you give Qatar a call?
Yeah, he's like, hold on a minute, guys. 1 second. Yeah, what was that again? What was gas you wanted? I mean, really, but here's my point. They got another, NATO is in the process of losing another conflict before they lose this one, because they lose all their conflicts. My prediction is they lose, because that's all they do is they lose. I don't know how it's going to, I hope we don't all lose, but here's my point. They got another conflict, they've got another conflict in Union that they're very busy losing. And they're doing a wonderful job of losing that. And they're going to run out of money. Oh, by the way, they ain't getting nothing else. And let me add this. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, for one moment, that $1 trillion was to fall out of the sky into the hands of Kaja Kallas. And she was to run over to Zelensky and say, here you go, buy some weapons. And he was to call the U.S., I need weapons. They didn't hang up. Really? So do we. We're running out. There is no money. And way worse than before. You know, we used to say there's no money and no weapons. We were only that far. There is absolutely zero, not a penny. And no matter how much they get, they're in the negative in weapons. This is disastrous. What's going on with Zelensky and his crew? How are they going to handle this?
Yeah, I mean, they're already whining about interceptors. You know, that is a constant problem for them. They're getting a handful of PAC-3 interceptors off of U.S. production lines every month due to long-term contracts signed with the Biden and Sullivan administration. But that is also preventing the U.S. from replenishing its own supplies. And Trump is obviously very, upset about how much air defense how many air defense interceptors and systems were wasted on what did he call Zelensky? P.T. Barnum?
Yes.
It gets even worse because without that 90 billion euros from Europe, they won't even be able to keep the lights on. I'm using that in the sense of the phrase, meaning, pay the government, but they already can't keep the lights on because of Russia's damage to the electrical infrastructure. But Hungary and Slovakia have finally stepped up, and this could all be, this is all, I hate the expression a perfect storm, but it is really becoming a pretty big storm for Ukraine in this situation, because Hungary and Slovakia have finally stepped up. And then they say that until Ukraine restores the flow of oil from Russia through the Druzhba pipeline, the friendship pipeline, through Ukrainian territory to them, Slovakia has stopped the supply of electricity to the Kiev regime, and they are a significant contributor, allowing them to keep some energy in the system. And Hungary is stopping diesel, which the Kiev regime absolutely needs for its military and for electrical generators, by the way, right now, that it needs for a lot. They're blocking the $90 billion as well. And Zelensky is absolutely refusing to restore the flow of oil through the pipeline. And they're starting talking military action. Hungary has moved troops to the Ukrainian border. Now, I'm not saying I believe that actual fight is going to break out, but it is a sign of how tense the situation is right now. And anything is possible because, one, Zelensky is about as stable as Trump is. Let's be honest. And two, he doesn't even have complete control of all of his own people, right? The Banderites, the far right. Anything can happen there. It's a desperate situation, and without that money from Europe, the last I saw, the Kiev regime will go bankrupt by April at the latest. Yeah. So it's the time pressure is on as well. And Russia, their head has just got to be spinning because there's so many second and third tier consequences going on all over the board, right? Like Russia and China, they have to make sure that the Iranian government survives, right? That is absolutely a geopolitical necessity for them. At the same time, the unintended quote unquote consequences, the blowback of what the U.S. is doing here is having effects on Ukraine, on the global energy market, on all of these things, on Europe, on U.S. allies in the Pacific. And there's so much going on right now. It's hard to keep everything in a big picture view of how everything affects everything else at this point. My info feed is just absolutely unmanageable at this point.
Yeah.
And it makes analysis very difficult. It was really simple when we had one conflict, and we understood it for several years now, and now this new conflict is spreading so crazily, and at the same time, this is just compounding on compounding. So Qatar is shutting down LNG shortages in the world, right? Zelensky is plotting to attack the Blue Stream and Turk Stream gas pipelines from Russia to Turkey through the Black Sea. And at the same time, they just blew up a Russian LNG tanker in the Mediterranean off the coast of Libya, supposedly out of Libyan territory, with an unmanned boat, a surface drone. And that happened just a couple of days ago. And then, of course, things like that are just sending the gas prices higher. I mean, there's so many of these different things going on now that are compounding each other. It's crazy. It really is. I don't want to. This isn't a we're all about to fire nukes at each other moment, but I cannot think of in terms of so much going on at once, a situation of global geopolitical crisis like we're experiencing right now. I can't remember anything. No. I find it very hard to. There's so much going on now.
What we're seeing is the collapse of an empire. And because an empire has 900 bases all over the world, and they have to, I'm a big believer. Everybody's like, this is all about Israel. I'm like, well, a big part of it's about China and Russia. We want to take Iran out. It's part of the Silk Road. It sends gas to China. It's in the back door of Russia. You know what I mean? I do not overlook the grand chessboard strategy here. And if that ain't enough, look at this. I'm going to go back to something that I've constantly said, Mark, a lot of people, I was outside with a lot of people in Venezuela. I said, I don't think it's going to work out. And I just said, talk to me in 6 months. I don't think it's going to work out the way. Look at this. Exclusive. U.S. turns up heat on Venezuela with threat to indict new leader Delcy Rodriguez. When you look down here, it tells you, right? Look at this. Federal prosecutors have put together possible corruption and money laundering charges and have communicated to Rodriguez that she is at risk of prosecution unless she continues to comply with Trump's demands. Now, I have friends there. What I've been told is that they ain't been going along with the Trump administration, and the Trump administration is getting pissed. And they're like, so now it's like, okay, we got Maduro. Now we want you to do what we want. Do this. And they're like, nah, we ain't doing that. You got to do it. Okay, well, now we'll come up with charges and we'll kidnap you too. I mean, what are they going to do? They kidnap somebody, they put somebody else in charge, and the person says, I'm not going to do it. So now they're like, well, we'll come up with charges against you too. Are you going to kidnap? And then somebody else comes in charge. What are you going to do? Every 3 months, kidnap the leader? It's insanity. That's falling apart too, Mark. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I have, no doubt that they're applying pressure to her, right? Whatever Quisling deal she made to turn over Maduro to the U.S., right? We'll let you alone if you turn over Maduro, right? And you can stay in charge. And then found out that they also then expected her to be their pliant little puppet. I'm sure she's not happy with that situation. And they may have to continually threaten to apply various forms of pressure to her. But could you tell me what exactly Venezuela is under Delcy Rodriguez is doing right now that the U.S. doesn't want them to do?
There's not much happening there.
Yeah,
there's not
exactly.
really much going on.
There's no oil going anywhere, but to the United
Yeah,
States.
there's not much of anything going on there right now. But whatever it is, they ain't happy with it, and they're not getting what they want, and they want. It's going to be. You know what? Here's my prediction, Mark. It will be a disaster because every stinking thing they put their hands on is a disaster. All it's going to be a disaster. None of it's going to work. Ukraine, disaster. Middle East, disaster. Venezuela, disaster. All of it. Well, that's my prediction, Mark. But some may not agree. But I'm just gonna tell everybody, like I said before, let's revisit this on June 1st and see how it works out.
Yeah. I mean, that's fair. You know, we'll keep an eye on it. But at the same time, we have Trump making some of his increasingly insane. And I'm of the opinion now that Trump is literally insane. That
yes, me too.
He's insane, right? It's not madman theory. He is literally a madman. He is a megalomaniac, and he has he's out of all control and proportion at this point. But so some of the comments coming out of the U.S. government right now, Hegseth, who is just war bro, Iran will beg for peace and let us pick their new leader. And at the same time, Trump talking to Israeli Channel 12, they are wasting their time, right, with the new supreme leader, which is Khomeini's son, Mujtaba. Khomeini's son is a lightweight. I have to be involved in the appointment, like I was with Delcy in Venezuela.
He was involved. Well, how'd this work? She was the vice president. The president was kidnapped. The natural succession is the vice president comes to power. So, but that's Trump. I understand. Well, I'll put it like this. At least he wasn't talking about the curtains in the ballroom. Did you see that the other day?
I did not.
There was they were talking about Iran, and this war is going bad, of course. And he started talking about the new curtains they're putting in the ballroom. He's lost it. They're like, yeah, so people are dying. The world's going to hell. Our economy's crashing. What do you think? Hey, we got new curtains in the ballroom. They're purple. They're going to be loving golden toilets. I'm like, oh, he's completely he's lost it, Mark.
Yeah, within a week, right? We've gone from talking that this military operation will take a few days to now they're talking months till September. So obviously, I mean, this is not a surprise to any of us, right? But they appeared to believe their own insane people's, wishful thinking promises that the Iranian government would just collapse if they killed the Ayatollah Khomeini, because we all know the Ayatollah Khomeini was a brutal dictator and he controlled everything in Iran. And the people would just rise up and seize their freedom as soon as he's gone. And, to give them credit, they were right. They killed him, and hundreds of thousands of Iranians did come out in the street, except they were there to mourn the loss of their leader and to chant death with America. And this was repeated, right, in Yemen, in Iraq, in Baghdad, which is a Shia majority country, in Bahrain, and in Lebanon.
Pakistan also.
Pakistan's not even a Shia majority country. They just hate the U.S.
I don't think the people in the U.S. are too thrilled about the U.S. these days, at least not our government. Let's hit on this before the end. I think this is important. Turkey, who it can be quite duplicitous at times, their leader, but they got issues because the U.S., if they try to drag these Kurds in, Turkey will bomb the hell out of them just because it's a Tuesday morning. There's nothing that Erdogan likes better than bombing Kurds. My point being, so Trump goes to Spain. We want to use your bases. Spain's like, you can't use their bases. Yeah, our bases. Darn you! We won't do business with you. We could use them if we wanted, right? Italy is not happy. NATO, Turkey's a NATO country. If they have enough trouble with Ukraine and NATO, now NATO's coming apart. Now Trump is in a feud with Spain. And my issue was, gee, Trump, I thought you had enough bases and all that and plenty of places to land your planes. So what happened to you? Why do you need a new, why are you going around hat in hand? Can anybody provide me with a place to land my planes? Almost like something happened to your runways.
Yeah, I don't think it's that Spanish bases are that critical that nothing else can be used. I just think it's that a European country is openly and publicly challenging what he's doing. They are defying him, right? And that is causing his outrage and causing him to make all sorts of, also insane statements about cutting all trade off with Spain. And then you have to think, well, how does that work legally when Spain is part of the EU and economic alliance? And at the same time, we apparently had the German chancellor, Sieg Heil Merz, agree, that Spain should be punished by the U.S. for not going along with the foreign policy orthodoxy. So yeah, I mean, on top of Hungary and Slovakia over Ukraine, have Spain dissenting on this, and Macron is playing footsie, and the West has problems, right? And this, of course, everyone's forgetting Greenland now, right? That's all yesterday's news. But I mean, I'm sure Trump hasn't given up on that. So yeah, there's problems in the West with unity, to say the least.
Yeah. Well, the other part of it is, all this talk about long term. Look, Iran's getting hit. Iran is planned for this. They do have some back check. Russia provides a lot, but it creates a lot of food. So Russia can go through the Baltics and bring them food and supplies by ships. They have some options. But we're talking about 90 billion people having to deal with getting fed and getting food and getting the basics, as opposed to the other 6 billion.
You mean Iran?
Iran, yeah. Iran having to feed the people and keep going in the midst of a war. Oh, by the way, I was watching this, the millions of people in the street chanting, no compromise, no surrender, only revenge. They're mad because their girls got killed in the school, their volleyball players blown up, Khomeini. So now on the other side, you have the rest of the world having to deal with. See, I just can't see the level of economic. I don't see how they can keep doing it. We always talk about this. I'm an American, man. In a couple of weeks, gas will be $10 a gallon, $12 a gallon. And it's game, set, and match for the U.S. economy long before that.
Okay, but let's, to be fair, right? Because I'm still trying to track all this in my head. What are the economic consequences for Iran? Because
they're bad. Yes,
they have no economy, right? They have no economy right now. Internal, but they're not getting any gas or oil out. And presumably they would have problems exporting just about anything right now.
Certainly.
Even to Russia, even through the north-south corridor. So Iran is also going to be under immense pressure. This is why I think everything is a race to the bottom with everyone.
Well, let me throw this at you though. I guess my perspective was this. But the people in Iran are screaming at the government, you better not stop. We want revenge. And the people in America are screaming, hey, you better stop. We didn't ask for this. So the difference is, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, not that as things get more difficult, they may not want it. But the Americans from day one are like, no way, they're going bananas. We don't want this. And they haven't felt the real pain yet.
The problem for Iran is, I agree that certainly with the rally around the flag effect that is happening now, just like it happened in 2025, that a substantial majority of the Iranian population is now supporting their government, their country, right? It's created the exact opposite effect that was intended with the assassination of Khomeini. At the same time, there is a not insignificant minority, we're talking 25, 30% of the Iranian population that does not like their government, right? Whether we're talking westernized, liberalized youth in the cities, whether we're talking these, ethnic minorities that, while not a huge part of the total population in certain fringe areas of the country, right? The border areas, they are the dominant, right? Like the Kurdish area, the Azeri area, the Baloch area, right? And so while these separatist groups, if they're activated by the CIA, which is exactly what the CIA is trying to do right now, they're not going to come storm Tehran, right? But what they're going to do is fight to take control of those fringe outer regions, right? Leading to a lessening of control. And what the US is already doing is they're bombing police stations. Right. They're bombing local military barracks to make it hard for the government to control these outer regions once those assets. And we can't forget everyone's favorite insane terrorist death cult, the Mujahideen Khalq, which the U.S. has kept in Albania on a leash for years. They're almost certain to be unleashed as well. Now, they're not going to storm Tehran, but once again, they can really complicate matters on the ground. I do not expect any of them to have, huge success, because even in Iraq, the Kurds and Syria, the Kurds only had success when they had the U.S. playing close air support for them. And right now, the U.S. can't do that. If somewhere down the line they're able to do that, then it gets more problematic. All I'm saying is both sides are damning each other so badly right now that I cannot make any predictions about what's going to happen in 3 days, much less several months from now, because it's bad.
Very dangerous situation.
Both sides. It's very bad, a very dangerous situation. And the possibilities of it spreading to other countries now are so extreme and credible that it's, well, the famous supposed Chinese curse, may you live in interesting times.
We are living in the collapse of an empire. I can tell you internally, this place is a mess. Being here, it's a mess. A lot of MAGA people are gone berserk. They're furious. They hate Trump. One of the guys, Crenshaw, the guy that wears a patch in his, but he's, a rabid neocon, rabid Zionist and all of that kind of stuff. The guy that wears the patch on his eye, he ran in his, in Texas. They had the primaries yesterday, right? I don't know how many times in a row he's won. He lost in a blowout by some new guy, blown out 55% to 40% or something. And people are looking at it saying, yeah, that's the Republicans are furious. Hey, we didn't vote for this. So
I agree with you that this is, if the US doesn't back off of this, it has a significant probability of being the real death knell of U.S. hegemony. At the same time, we're facing the death knell of a lot of other things as well. The global energy market, the global order, the nuclear non-proliferation regime, right? There's so many things collapsing right now.
Well, how about this? If the two
maritime trade is collapsing.
How about this? If these Gulf states start to fall apart, right? They are critical because they're the ones who do the petrodollar, and they recycle that money into the US, and then it funds our various bubbles and AI bubble. You know what I mean? If they lose control of these Gulf vassals, that's all that money that and then these Gulf vassals buy, $10 billion, $20 billion worth of US military stuff that they park in the desert that they don't even know how to use. And they're recycling all of this money into the petrodollars. So the other thing of the US empire, the foundation of our economy, which is a fraud, if they lose, these Gulf states start to fall apart, that is, our banking system probably crash.
I have a what if situation to make this even crazier than it already is. Let's say theoretically that Iran, that U.S. Israeli air defense is completely exhausted. They run out of interceptors, And Iran is able to keep up launching of ballistic missiles, hypersonic missiles, drones. And Iran is getting hit, or Israel is getting hit so bad that they feel that they are in an existential situation. And they use nukes against Iran, right? What happens then? What are the global ripple consequences of a nuclear weapon use against a BRICS member, a member of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, right? That, you know, what would the global South think? Think of all the Arab countries that would immediately line up and say, we need nuclear weapons now, right? Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Turkey, others, right? I mean, everyone would be demanding nuclear weapons, because it would be perfectly obvious at that point that there's only one thing that stops the US and Israel, and that's if you have nuclear weapons, which should once again lead us a moment of reflection and sympathy for the loneliness, the sublime loneliness that Kim Jong-un is experiencing right now. Because no one is talking, no one is bombing, no one is even sanctioning, at least not any further, North Korea. Why? Because North Korea's got nuclear weapons. They have a deterrent that the US can't do anything about. And if there's any condemnation of the Iranian leadership, it's for not doing exactly what the US claimed they were doing and achieving that deterrent earlier.
I've got that up on my Facebook page. So we are of like mind right there. That's it.
There we go.
All right. Well, Mark, before we roll out, everybody should know Mark does have, you know, you're probably thinking, oh, well, he's in Russia, for God's sake. There's no way I can find out what's going on with Mark Sleboda all the time. Well, there is. It's boosty.to. Mark, let everybody know before we roll out.
Yeah. I'm a Russian citizen living in Russia, which means I'm subject to your lovely country's sanctions, which means that YouTube and Patreon and Substack and Buy Me a Coffee and all that wonder stuff doesn't work for me. But what does work is Boosty. It's sanctions proof, right? It's good for you and it's good for me. And I post all my stuff there. Anyone can follow for free, right? And see all the interviews I do with other people and stuff. But I also do a lot of exclusive content, hours and hours of it every week for those who want to contribute, as well as subscribers, right? Who want to send a few rubles my way. We do a weekly Q&A with some great questions. Yesterday, I just had fun answering. We do an In Focus episode, a week in review, and we have a private Discord community where we can chat and shoot the shit geopolitically with all the trolls and spam bots and ads and anything like that. So if you want to suffer, if you're masochistic enough that you want more of my cynicism and realism, that's the place to do it.
Thanks a lot, everybody. Thanks a lot, Mark. Everybody, as always, thank you very much to all my Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee and all of those people who keep the channel going. You got a P.O. box for the snail mail people. There's still a lot of them out there. Thank you very much. Share this on all your social media platforms.